From 1950 to 1954, a junior senator from the rural state of Wisconsin became one of the most powerful and influential figures in US politics. In this program, we're going to use film from the archive to examine the rise and fall of Senator Joseph McCarthy.
There is only one issue of communists in our government.
I am not a communist.
Have you no decency, sir?
Just how important did McCarthy become? This next clip comes from a documentary made in the 1980s, and it gives us a sense of how prominent McCarthy became.
And at the head of the parade appeared this man, Joseph R. McCarthy, the junior senator from Wisconsin. Looking for an issue that would get him re-elected, he seized on the fears of millions and launched the squalid campaign that became known as McCarthyism. Its tactic, reckless and undocumented accusations against government employees. Intimidation bred audacity, and audacity fed upon itself. McCarthy soon had the celebrity he sought. The stage was his alone to command.
What conditions allowed McCarthy to become so prominent? This next clip analyzes how America became gripped by a Red Scare in the later 1940s.
Now, in 1949, all of China fell to the communist forces of Mao Zedong. We saw red almost everywhere. And the Russians, the technologically backward, primitive Russians, got the bomb. We leaped from what we knew to what we dreaded to think. Somehow, somewhere, possibly right here at home, we were being betrayed. Insistent questions resounded in Washington. Who helped the Russians gain the secret of the A-bomb? Who lost China to the communists? Suspicions fell on fertile ground. There had been concern about communist spies even before the war. Now we learned in 1946 of a big Soviet espionage ring in Canada with possible links in the U.S. So Washington launched a wide hunt for security risks in government. The litany of people attesting to their loyalty became as familiar as once had been the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag.
I am not and never have been a communist. I am not and never have been a fellow traveler. I am not and never have been a supporter of, a member of, or a sympathizer with any organization known to me to be or suspected by me of being controlled or dominated by communists.
In this Red Scare, alleged communist spies were rounded up. But did they get a fair trial in the midst of the hysteria? What does this next clip suggest?
11 of America's top communists are found guilty of conspiracy to overthrow the government by force. After a trial lasting 9 months, these are the men who were brought to book, ending an investigation that has extended over 10 years. In a case that has made political and legal history, John F. X. McGoey and his staff of assistants waged an unrelenting battle, a battle that has caused Mr. McGoey to be cited as a probable future federal judge. On the other hand, 6 of the defense lawyers received sentences of from 1 to 6 months on 40 citations for contempt of court by Judge Harold Medina. 7.5 hours deliberation brought the verdict, and as it becomes legal history, the Red leaders for the moment reach the end of the line as they start the trip to the detention house to await sentences which can run as high as 10 years in prison and $10,000 fine. It cost the government almost $1 million to achieve this result. It was a price paid by a free people to guarantee freedom of speech to all and a fair trial by the government, even to those who are accused of plotting to destroy it.
The people who made the movies were investigated too. What do the next clips reveal about how Hollywood reacted to the Red Scare?
We will forthwith discharge or suspend without compensation those in our employ, and we will not re-employ any of the 10 until such time as he is acquitted or has purged himself of contempt and declares under oath that he is not a communist. We will not knowingly employ a communist or a member of any party or group which advocates the overthrow of the government of the United States by force or by any illegal or unconstitutional methods. We request Congress to enact legislation to assist American industry to rid itself of subversive, disloyal elements. Nothing subversive or un-American has appeared on the screen, nor can any number of Hollywood investigations obscure the patriotic services of 30,000 loyal Americans in Hollywood who have rendered their government invaluable service in war and in peace.
I personally, with all due regard to Mr. Hoover, whose opinion I respect most highly, certainly do believe that the Communist Party should be outlawed. However, I'm not an expert on politics or of what the reaction would be. If I had my way about it, they'd all be sent back to Russia or some other unpleasant place.
The Red Threat was big news, but it became even bigger news in 1950, when Senator Joseph McCarthy claimed that the government had been infiltrated by communist spies. Here he is in action in a government hearing in 1949 and on a US TV program in 1952.
Mr. Chairman, today this man, John S. Service, is a ranking officer in the policy-making group of untouchables on duty in Calcutta, India, one of the most strategically important listening posts in the world today. He was not an acceptable risk under Mr. Atchison's own yardstick of loyalty the day he entered the government.
Mr. Huey, there is only one issue as I can see it. There's one great evil from which all of the lesser evils flow in this country. The lesser evils such as high taxes, inflation, the absence of so many of the husbands, sons, and brothers in the service, and that is the suicidal, Kremlin-directed foreign policy, the extent to which it's controlled by communists in our government.
So how did McCarthy operate? In this next clip, one of McCarthy's opponents gives us an insight into his methods.
The technique used by the senator in making these charges is apparently typical. He first announced at a press conference that he had discovered the top Russian espionage agent in the United States. At this time, he withheld my name. But later, after the drama of his announcement was intensified by delay, he whispered my name to a group of newspaper men with full knowledge that it would be bandied about by rumor and gossip and eventually published. I say to you that this was unworthy of a senator or an American.
So did McCarthy's methods work? Watch this extract from a 1952 TV program and see what it reveals about how important McCarthy had become by that time.
You are, of course, one of the most controversial figures we've had in the Senate in a long time, and you have the distinction of having coined a new word for the dictionary, namely McCarthyism. Now, how do you define McCarthyism, sir?
Mr. Huey, I didn't coin the phrase. The Daily Worker originated the phrase. That was the first paper that used it. It's their phrase. We let them define it.
Now,
to them it means, of course, fighting communism. Or putting it the way one columnist did the other day, he said, apparently McCarthyism means calling a man a communist who is later proven to be one.
Now, I'd like to just ask you this as one American. Have you had any regrets about any of the tactics that you've used in your fight on the State Department, sir? Have you done anything that you wouldn't do if you were doing it again?
Mr. Huey, I think at times we should have hit much harder. I think we understated the number of cases. Take, for example, in the Jessup case, originally I said Jessup was unfit to serve because he had too great an affinity for communist causes. That was the greatest understatement that I've ever made.
Senator, it's been said that our Secretary of State's actions in the signing of the Japanese peace treaty indicated a very anti-Russian stand. Do you feel that there's been any change in the State Department since you first began your attacks on communists in the State Department.
Mr. Talbot, I don't think they can change any more than a leopard can change his spots.
Even at the height of his power and influence, there were people who were prepared to challenge McCarthy. Watch this next extract from a 1952 TV program and see how well you think McCarthy reacts to the criticism.
Now, Senator, do you think that you have been guilty of any un-Americanism yourself in your efforts to combat what you define as un-Americanism?
If fighting communists and getting a bit rough with them, Mr. Huey, is un-American, then I must plead guilty to being un-American.
Do you think that you used any unfair tactics against Senator Tidings, for instance?
Senator Tidings is the man who defeated Senator Tidings, not McCarthy.
I noticed that Senator Tidings has offered you $10,000 if you will convict about 57 communists. Are you expecting to take him up on that offer?
Well, Tidings, I understand, he didn't make the offer to me, he made it to the press. I understand he offered $10,000 if I would convict 57 communists before the 8th of February. Well, that's 10,057 is about $175 each. Keep in mind that it took the government about 10 years to convict Alger Hiss. The cost was over $100,000. So when Little Millard says I'll give McCarthy $175 each, I think it's more of that clever fakery of which my little friend has been guilty of so long, and which the people of Maryland recognize.
Senator, how about Senator Benton in Connecticut? Are you planning any action against Senator Benton, such as you took against Senator Tidings?
I think it'll be unnecessary. Little Willie Benton, Connecticut's mental midget, keeps on. It'll be unnecessary for me or anyone else to do any campaigning against him. He's doing his campaigning against himself.
As time went on, McCarthy's accusations became wilder and his critics became stronger. Watch this extract from a 1954 hearing. Compare McCarthy's performance here with some of the earlier performances you've seen.
At this moment, Senator, I think I never really gauged your cruelty or your recklessness. Have you no sense of decency, sir? At long last, have you left no sense of decency?
So how do we make sense of it all? Here's an analysis of McCarthyism by US broadcaster Bill Moyers in 1984. Do you agree with his views? And do you think McCarthyism has any lessons for us today?
How had this Inquisition gone on for so long? Why didn't more people stand up sooner? Well, after 4 years of total war against fascism, we found it hard to come down from the patriotic high of a righteous cause. We saw communist police states that reminded us of the ugly totalitarian powers of the 30s, and real communist spies turned up among our allies. Our leaders made the most of these combustible materials. To embolden us for our New World role, they created an official case of the jitters from just about every quarter, from churches, industrialists, unions, schools, the press, and the military. We were bombarded with a hate the enemy campaign rare for peacetime. The Attorney General's list of subversive organizations made it open season on scapegoats. And the fear got out of control. It created an irrational craving for the safety of conformity, a stampede of patriotic fervor. A lot of things got trampled.